Thank you for staying with us. Security agencies and people living in Abuja and its environs are on the alert following intelligence report from the United States of America and the United Kingdom that terrorists are planning to carry out deadly attacks in the Federal Capital Territory. According to the security advisory, possible targets include government buildings, places of worship, schools, and other public places. Though the Department of State Services has called for calm, it has done very little to douse the tension in the Federal Capital Territory, as many schools, companies, and even government parastatals have begun taking precautionary measures. Some schools have shut their gates and moved all classes online, same as some churches. We have in the studio former consultant, Presidential Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons, and member, West African Action Network for Small Arms, Darlentine Umoru. Good morning.
My pleasure. Morning.
All right, and joining us via Zoom is the founder and CEO, Beacon Consulting Limited, Kabir Adamu. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here again.
All right. Let me begin with you, Kabir. I wonder what came to mind when you saw that alert from the US and the UK talking about possible attacks in the Federal Capital Territory, and not just the Federal Capital Territory, but across some other states in the country, places of worship, government buildings, schools, and markets.
So the first thing that came to my mind is that I wished the alert had come from a Nigerian government department. As you are aware, there are, at the last count, about 27 ministries, departments, and agencies that are involved in security in Nigeria. And my expectation, and I'm sure like that of every Nigerian, is that if there's going to be an alert, it should come from one of them and not from a foreign entity that is operating in Nigeria. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, because I'm in the security space, specifically in the intelligence space, I'm aware that since the Kuje incident, there has been a lot of, for lack of a better word, agitation within the diplomatic space with regards to safety and security. If you recall, after the Kuje incident, the US Embassy, several other embassies did release alerts and warnings highlighting the increased threat level in Abuja, mainly because they felt if a hard target like the Kuje Custodial Center could be attacked, then they are also vulnerable to such types of attacks. Now, that was one of the precursors, as it were. Then we also picked up, sometime about 2 weeks ago, that a dummy bomb was placed in the compound of one of the Western embassies here in Abuja. Of course, I'll be mindful this is a public space so that I don't, mention specific targets, as it were. So clearly, even though it was a dummy bomb, and we know that they did invite the police, especially the EOD section police, to look into that dummy bomb, where we were aware that that kind of incident could trigger several responses. And so we're not very surprised with that alert from the US Embassy and the British High Commission, as well as the Canadian mission here in Nigeria. Now, having said that, the other component is that we're about to have an election. And if you recall, in 2014, security played a huge role in the outcome of the elections. And we saw foreign embassies also keen into the narrative around elections. So they did release a report at that time where they highlighted threats around Abuja and several other parts of the country. And because the then opposition party, which is the ruling party then, used security as one of the standpoints for which it won its election, that kind of played into the narrative for the election. So again, from an analytical point of view, we factored this in with these recent alerts by the US Embassy, hoping that it's also not an attempt, unfortunately, to key into the narrative around security. I'm sure you agree with me that security is going to be one of the issues that would determine the outcome of the 2023 elections.
You brought the idea of nationalism to intelligence, but intelligence does not bear national flag. It bears bandits and bombs. So what's the point? Are you sure people don't know about it just because they didn't make noise about it?
Well, I'm sure it's my space. I'm sure you invited me here because of my credentials. I work in that space. And before I told you there were narratives around this starting about 2-3 weeks back. So even before it became public, we knew that something was up. So without going into the details, I did make my inquiries. I'm not just saying it, I'm saying it on the basis of inquiries I've made. And if you pick the responses by the SSS and that of the police, and you use the fine, tooth comb like I did to analyze that statement, you would realize that in none of those two statements did they corroborate the information released by the U.S. Embassy and the British High Commission. All they did is to say that they are aware and that they would use it as one of the intelligence feeds. In other words, they are not confirming that they have intel because we use the word intelligence loosely. Intelligence is of different types. If it's actionable intelligence, the imperatives would have been answered: who, what, when, where, and how. And then that means as law enforcement agents, you can go after the perpetrator and prevent that incident from happening. But I can assure you that even the statement by the US Embassy was not clear regarding whether this is an actionable intelligence. In fact, I can tell you clearly that they don't know whether it's an individual or a group. So there are so many questions. This is a public space. I'll be mindful of what I say. But I didn't just make that statement from the blues. I made it on the basis of my expertise.
All right. Let's come back to the studio now. Still talking on this matter. In fact, the police, from a report yesterday, said that they were not aware of that security alert of sort. And this morning, if you look at the papers, on the front page of Daily Trust, there's troops now, Boko Haram kingpins in Abuja. There's been tight security at government offices in satellite towns. And I'm wondering if these measures we're beginning to take all of a sudden is going to address what the US and the UK is talking about. If we are moving in the right direction at addressing this matter, basically.
Well, let me start from the point of view of the DSS. They've said there's nothing much to worry about at this point in time. Again, let's not lose or take away credit from some of our security agencies. Talking about intel, sometimes you weigh the gravity of some of these intelligence you gathered, and then how and when they should be used, and then the weight of it. The UK, the embassy, the US, the embassy, they have come up with a report on their own intel, specifically for their citizens. They're not talking about you and I. They're not talking about the locals. They are merely warning their own citizens to be mindful of who and whom, where they associate with at this point in time. It's not the first time we're getting this alert concerning Abuja. Specifically, this is on Abuja.
Yeah.
We're not talking about Lagos. We're not talking about some other places. Abuja is the seat of power. Not quite long ago, we had the same issue of the alert, coming from our own DSS. I think UK or US also released this alert, and then our DSS also came. Then a lot of mix-up. We had a lot of mix-up as to where they were coming from. If you study that statement from the US, for instance, it didn't give details. It didn't really give details as to basic factors, the smaller factors that the people are supposed to be mindful about. Whether this will address the issues. We will still receive alerts, security alerts, between now and the elections, because a lot of activities are going on.
Yes.
And if a lot of activities are going on, it is expected that there will be dummy about security issues, throwing out some of those things to create panic in the society. And I'm sure that with Mr. President's marching order to the security agencies, he gave them up until December. I hope we are not losing sight of that. He gave the security agencies up until December to clear or at least bring to a very minimal point the level of insecurity we're experiencing in the country. And I'm sure if the DSS says there's nothing to worry about, it apparently means that they are on top of the game. And if they are on top of the game and a miniature country says to its own citizens, be mindful of where you associate, of course, I don't think it should be something so alarming to the rest of us.
Why do you call them miniature?
An embassy is a miniature country on another country. That's what I mean by that. Any embassy of a country is taking US, a representative of US, to your own country.
It's a global miniature.
It's a global miniature.
It's a mammoth ant.
Well, true. But the truth is, here specifically, even though we need to benefit from that information, that, the security alert, they were specifically talking to their own people. And their own people don't live outside this place. They live and mingle with the people in that same community. Okay, but if the DSS has said there's nothing to worry about, we should go about our normal duties, it means that they are on top of the game.
Is it significant that
we need to quickly go on a break because I would like for him to address some things that he just said. But let's go on this commercial break. When we return, we'll continue our conversation. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We've been looking at the security threat, the security alarm raised by the US and UK embassies of imminent attacks in the Federal Capital Territory. And we have security consultants speaking with us. So we have Darlington Umoru in the studio and Kabir Adamu in Abuja. Before we went to the break, I wanted to ask a
question. It is significant that just about 24 hours after the alert, they picked up
two Boko Haram kingpins
in Abuja and also in, is it Kano?
In Abuja.
Abuja and some other place. I think Kano also.
Yeah.
Is it significant?
Well, I do not really know.
Or is it psychological?
I think it's more of a psychological boost, like giving the people assurance that it's like we are monitoring some persons already.
Yes.
But you see, there are issues about security you don't just bring out, you don't just release. Sometimes you could be following up some persons, some terrorists, some bandits. You could know they are valuable. You could be following up to see traces, who they associate with, and what they are doing. But when there's an alarm and they know that they've been noticed and they want to take off, they could be quickly arrested. Now, my challenge, coming back to the release of the UK and the US, is that you have in a country a security arrangement in place. There's supposed to be what we call synergy among security agencies. Okay, when you discover some of these things, you are supposed to relate with the security agencies on ground in that country, particularly those of them who are nationals. What have you done with your information with some of these people, sharing information, synergy now, working it out? Of course, you gather intel from surveillance or from whatever. Now, when you got all of this, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to liaise with the local security arrangement in that country. And then, of course, if there are issues, these are the people who are going to protect you. These are the people who are going to protect your citizens, your people who are in that particular country. I'm not just talking about Nigeria now. I'm talking about any other country. What is the synergy? Is it enough just issuing a statement to create panic? As much as
Would they just want to create panic out of
I wouldn't
nothing?
say they just want to, but the point I'm making is that we have security agencies in this country. Now, if you found out security issues, how much of these persons did you relate with? To say, okay, this is what we have found out, this is our intelligence, this is our intel. Okay, come, let's share with you and see how to work it out. It's not enough just putting out a statement. How much of these persons have you been able to take out of the society, from the community that are posing threats, talking about the terrorists and the bandits? I don't like separating them anymore because they are all terrorists now.
Yeah.
So I don't like separating them. So how much have you done? I'm not looking at shouting what is going to happen. It's great, but is that enough in the security balance? Raising the alarm? Why not work with these local security agencies? You have several of them that you could have called to a meeting and share your intelligence with, and then at the end of the day, you said, this is what we have, and then what do we do? How do we nip this in the bud? But how much of that did we get?
Right, let's get Kabiru's buying into what you have just said. Kabiru, I'm sure you are listening to the conversation, and Darlington Umori is saying that what these embassies, talking about the US and the UK, should have done is to have a conversation with the security agencies and talk about how to address it instead of raising an alarm.
Well, we have an established intelligence liaison platform. The US is an ally, the UK is also an ally, and we have not just bilateral, but there are several multilateral platforms that we have liaison arrangements. Now, this is a technical term. Liaison is a platform where you share intelligence between friendly countries. Of course, there are conditions surrounding the sharing of that intelligence. So Darlington is right. That's the appropriate thing to do. Under those platforms, if you receive anything, whether it's imminent or not, you share. For the simple reason that, first off, you don't want to be seen as involving in internal matters of a friendly country. In fact, even if it's not a friendly country, no country would allow a foreign partner to get itself involved in internal politics or matters. And it is from that angle that I am a little bit concerned about this alert. Yes, the US has an obligation to its citizens to warn them if it's privy to intelligence, but it also has an obligation to the host country, in this instance, Nigeria, to inform Nigeria when it has access to intelligence. What would have been the normal procedure, and I hope in normal, and again, this is the pre-election year, I'm hoping that the candidates for the 2023 elections would pick this up. In normal circumstances, we should invite the US ambassador in Nigeria, the foreign ministry in Nigeria should invite him, ask him critical questions. Did you share this so-called intelligence with our security department?
Exactly.
If you shared that information, what else can you share with us? And if that didn't happen, then of course we should be able to, with all sense of purpose and sincerity, issue either a warning or some statement, not just to the US embassy, but to all the embassies in Nigeria, to remind them that, look, an election is about to happen, and statements like this could have consequence on the election. So we'll appreciate going forward, if you are privy to such information, to be mindful of how you share it so that it does not send a wrong signal. Darlington is right. There is a significant level of apprehension. I looked at the papers today. In fact, from yesterday through to today, almost all the papers had that issue in their front pages. And again, I want to emphasize, we're in a pre-election year. This security, as you know, is one of the factors that will determine the outcome of the election. So we should be very mindful how we go about handling issues with regards to security.
Is it not even interesting that US and UK are issuing a lot at the same time? We will get a sense that they shared information among themselves rather than the host country.
Well, they are, as you know, they are Western countries. They work together. They have some shared interests. And apart from those shared interests, they also discuss some of these things among themselves. And the effect of it is that they seek to project this shared interest that they have. So I'm not surprised, but I want to emphasize that this so-called alert, which is based on an intelligence, is yet to be corroborated. This is the basis of my conclusion. If it was corroborated, and by corroboration I mean there are sources that have confirmed, quote and unquote, the intelligence, then of course there is no reason for us. I started by saying the US has an obligation to its citizens Nigeria too has an obligation to its citizens. In fact, you are aware that the Diaspora Commission released a travel advisory on Cyprus. So we need to be separate that obligation is there. We can't take it away, it's a fact. But there is also an obligation from a country that has a diplomatic representation to the host government in this instance. Apart from that, where there is an alliance, and I also emphasize that point, if there is a friendly alliance, there are countries, I mean, a good example is Russia and the US at the moment. There is no obligation because they are practically in a proxy war in Ukraine. But in this instance, this is a friendly country. There is an alliance between us. There is that obligation that they should share that information. And I can tell you from my standpoint that the intelligence has never been corroborated as at yesterday and as at today. We don't know about tomorrow, whether it will be corroborated. And it is on that basis that I consider that alert a little bit bizarre, given the circumstances that Nigeria is at the moment.
So are you saying that because it has not been corroborated, Nigerians can perhaps go to sleep with their two eyes closed?
Not at all. If we release a report every month, that's by my consultancy, Beacon Consulting Limited. If you pick our report for September, we indicated that at least 861 Nigerians were killed in the month of September. And from January to the end of September, about 8,900 Nigerians have been killed. If I break it down to the regions or to the states, there is no state in the country that there is no threat factor existing. So, we can't say we should sleep. All I'm saying is that when you use the word intelligence, the likelihood is that you have ticked at least 3 out of the 5 imperatives. And I mentioned the imperatives: who, what, when, where, and how. Now, where you are not able to tick all those imperatives and you refer to it as intelligence, no, it's not intelligence, it's mere information. And that's where I stand. So yes, we should remain situationally aware. We should be mindful of the fact that there are threat factors. And let's not forget that we're in an ember period. The ember period, traditionally, we see an increase in crime situation. But we also know that the security agencies are doing a lot. The Kuje incident appeared to have been a wake-up call for them. So immediately after the Kuje incident, we've seen almost a phenomenal increase in security operations. The TTP around their operations has been massive. For the first time under this administration, the Buhari administration, we're seeing the creation of a special unit within the military for addressing threat factors within the forests. So we know, for instance, that there is an operation called Operation Forest Sanity in northwest and north central Nigeria, and that unit is going after both the bandits and the terrorists within their enclaves. That has never happened in the past. And in the case of Kaduna, we saw the GOC himself leading in the front line, that particular unit. That is phenomenal. It's never happened. And the result of that is the several commanders that have been arrested and others that have been killed. So progress is being made, but the fact that 800 plus Nigerians have been killed in a month makes me very worried. We need to bring that number to below 10, and then we can clap our hands. And let's not also forget, like Darlington mentioned, the president has given a timeline of the end of this December for all of these things to be brought to an end. So yes, the threats are there, but the security agencies are also doing a lot. We also need to play our role as Nigerians, and that is the basis of the police alert or advisory yesterday. First off, they are going to do a simulation exercise in Abuja, and I think that simulation exercise is all around confidence building. But right. we as Nigerians, we need to play a role. And let me also conclude by saying intelligence is grassroots based. If we don't change the way we manage intelligence within the country and return to the age-old way where we have collection capabilities at the grassroots level, then unfortunately we'll continue to miss the mark. And I'm hoping that the Minister of Interior is listening to this, because frankly, this lies squarely on his shoulder. It is not a military thing. To an extent, it is not really a police thing. Yes, the police has the capabilities, but there are agencies within the Ministry of Interior whose responsibility it is to make intelligence a grassroots activity.
This issue of deadline in December gives us the impression that they just woke up. So was Kuje a blessing in disguise?
Well, the blessing in disguise, the attack, I do not want to see it as a blessing in whatever guise we want to consider here. But Kuje actually exposed a number of issues, talking about a facility of that magnitude that housed leadership of terrorists who were going through trials and who were in a remand custody, and those of them who have apparently been jailed. But at the end of the day, we had a number of attacks on correctional facilities across the country before I go to Gucci. We had that in Kogi State. We had the one in the west here, Oyo State. And then one or two, not talking about what happened during the NSAS now. After the NSAS, we had pockets of heat on correctional facilities. Yes, across the country. But what was alarming about that of Kuje was the fact that it was at the center of power, the seat of power. And then where you have facilities of all the security, the headquarters of all the security agencies, major military formations, their headquarters. And the success of that attack also exposed a number of issues. For instance, it was after that attack we did gather, when Mr. President visited, that some of the security gadgets that were supposed to help technology, achieve counter attacks or attacks by people, people who are coming from outside to, break, or whether there's an internal break now. Those are those facilities that would have helped raise the alarm outside that place. Incidentally, they were discovered not to have been working. And then we look at the security put in place around that facility specifically. Not talking about other. Abuja had a peculiarity because one, it was at the seat of power, and then two, it housed very sensitive persons. And it was that same facility that was housing Abba Kyari, and a lot of them. But at the end of the day, it exposed a number of issues. What really led to Mr. President giving that marching order at this point in time was beyond what happened in Kuje. You recall that at a point in time, even the bandits, one group actually made a statement saying that they were going to go after Mr. President. Yes. It was, I do not, till tomorrow, I cannot really fathom where that came from. Abuja is
So swagger, they felt that they can go anywhere. I mean, you went to your maximum prison and they did that for hours and nothing happened. So the other maximum prison is Aso Rock.
I was really taken aback. And then the question that I asked at that point in time is that, what you call this swagger? Maybe you have answered that question now. What gave them that audacity to make that kind of statement? That is the maximum statement any terrorist organization could make. If you say you want to go after the president of a country, it's at that point in time, I kept saying that I saw this thing I was in the Northwest, where I covered 5 of the 6 Northwestern states in just 2 weeks, where we had interactions with the security agencies and the military. But in all of it, what came out of all of that is the fact that even the people, like he talked about security being a grassroots matter, it is the matter for every person. The people, the locals, know where these bandits were residing.
They know where the bodies are buried.
They could point. They were telling me, Oga, this area is a no-go area. I've given that instance here where we were to move from Sokoto to Katsina. There's this short route, but we were warned not to follow it because that was the home of the bandits. where they even parade assault rifles on the road. And then somebody told me instantly there, he said, "Oh God, my uncle was killed there last year." So we had to go do the is it merry-go-round now or the Israelite journey now?
Is that route still operating today?
Which of them?
That route is that no-go.
Well, as at the time I was in Sokoto, it was no longer operating. But as at today, I cannot tell if the security agencies have been able to take over that route. It's not just about, it's free. You can, if you want to take all the risks, you can follow it. If you choose to follow, if you want to take all the risk, then you could follow it. But I don't know about now. But we follow the other routes and then we go. But the people, the locals will tell you, they are here. There's another route between Zamfara. Now, if you're leaving Zamfara, that could take you to Niger State. It's a very short route also. But it's a no-go area. If you're coming to Lagos, apparently that's the route you're supposed to follow, link up, do a bypass of Kaduna and the rest of them.
So the narrow road has become the dangerous one. And that we are told in the Bible, say the way of the broad road. The way of the broad road, because it leads to destruction. They take the narrow road because few there be that find it. So they have turned it upside down now.
You see, the security chiefs, the one that baffles me the most is the statement of T.Y. Danjuma.
Yes.
Who was at a point in time
Chief of Army Staff.
Defense.
Minister of Defense.
Yes.
So we're talking about an expert here, an authority. You're asking the people to take up arms to defend themselves. Where in the world
is that done?
Where in the world? One, T.Y. Danjuma is aware that there's a total ban on importation of arms for states.
Are you saying T.Y. Danjuma is a subvert?
I'm careful about my choice of words here, or well, considering to your own definition of it, or in all of it. But the truth to me is that T.Y. Danjuma knows about everything. One, assault rifle is banned. At the moment, bearing of arms is banned. Number three, ECOWAS had a ban on all ECOWAS countries on importation of arms. And if you must import arms, ECOWAS must give you what they call, oh God. There's a certificate ECOWAS must issue to you, okay, to enable you import arms. And it takes a process. We're already saying that illicit arms in the hands of the non-state actors, the number of it far outweighs what we have in the hands of the state actors, if you want to look at it. And then you are not talking about the individual. Where do they get those arms from? Where in the world has it been done? I need a reference. When you tell me things like this, or say you are taking us back to what the Zamfara state governor started at a point in time when he asked the state commissioner to issue arms to the indigenes to be able to defend themselves. At the moment, the worries now is the number of small arms and light weapons circulating. The reason you and I, well, I don't know about you, the reason I will run away from the other man is because he's carrying a gun.
Weapon.
If he's carrying a weapon, a firearm, that's the reason I will run away from him. But I don't know, some of you have this thing they call the black magic that could protect you.
So you think I have black magic?
I've not said that. I said some. I never mentioned your name.
Anyway.
But the truth, the truth here is that we're talking about mopping out illicit weapons from circulation. There are only two things a firearm can do. Only two things they are manufactured to do. One, to kill. Two, to maim. And so that's why if anybody's carrying a firearm now and is facing me, I will run away. So otherwise, you are asking every other person
but
in
he
the
is
country.
saying that these persons keep killing innocent Nigerians, and it is high time for innocent Nigerians to defend themselves. And he also spoke about the fact that some military personnel are colluding with these people to carry out their
Give us the names.
Right.
They arrested some too.
Yes, but if you have those that have not been arrested, you are not saying the government is not doing anything about it. If you say some have been arrested, it meant that the government is actually doing something about it.
Maybe selectively, who knows?
Then give us the names of those who have been arrested.
Let's get Kabiru's contribution to this matter. Kabir, are you there? Can you hear us?
Yes, I've become a spectator. I'm listening to you.
Let's get your perspective to this matter. T.Y. Danjuma's call for Nigerians to carry up perhaps weapons to defend themselves.
Yeah, I think it's quite unfortunate that someone of the standing and repute of Tiwa Danjuma, who, as you recall, is a former Minister of Defense, has occupied critical positions within past governments and is respected not just as a national leader, but an ethnic leader, as well as to an extent a religious leader. He's also a philanthropist of good repute. So, I mean, I find it really odd that that statement is coming from him. I can understand his reasoning, but I question the rationale behind that reasoning for the simple reason that he was specific, referring to a particular threat element. Now, I would say with all sense of responsibility that I managed a team in Taraba State, and 3 of those team members were abducted. Now, who abducted them? Unfortunately, it was an ethnic militia in Benue State, for that matter. And because this is a public space, I'll be mindful of what I say. That the leader of that militia was not too long ago killed by the military over circumstances that became questionable and that
Yes.
gave rise to a lot of discussions within the country. What am I trying to say? First off, that there are militias. Some of these militias are ethnic. Then there are criminal groups, and then there are also terrorist groups. All of these are threat factors that exist within this space called Taraba. Some of them in neighboring states such as Benue, others within Adamawa. And then in the case of Taraba, even within outside Taraba, you recall when a certain group left Cameroon, came into Taraba, carried out an incident before leaving Taraba. So all of these are threat factors within the state. And unfortunately, when T.Y. Danjuma was making his speech, he singled out one of those threat factors and did not take into consideration the several other threat factors. So what am I trying to say? Security is holistic. There is almost, unfortunately, a breakdown of that security. And it's not specific to Taraba. Neither it is specific to Zamfara or to Katsina State. It is at the national level. And each and every one of us, including them, the leaders, share a portion of that responsibility. In fact, if you allow me to say, they share a greater portion of that responsibility. Now, are we going to bequeath to our children a situation of lawlessness where everybody is able to carry a weapon, and then we're back to that state of anarchy where the strongest person kind of rules? No, that's not Nigeria I want to bequeath to my kids. We should. What is the issue at the moment? The issue at the moment, just like Darlington has said, is that there is a proliferation of small arms and light weapons. The second issue is that we have a Weapons Act that has become moribund. So if T.Y. Danjuma had advised that we look at that moribund Weapons Act to strengthen it and make that Weapons Act more amenable to our current day situation so that every Nigerian who wants to bear a weapon and that meets the criteria that is set out in the Weapons Act is able to, then I probably would have been happier with that statement. He never referred to that. Secondly, as the former chief of staff.
We have to wrap up now. We have run out of time, Kabir Adamu, but we must...
So in conclusion, what I want to say is that there is a social contract. That social contract speaks about the roles of the government and the roles of the citizen. We need to look at the contract quickly.
All right. We must thank you, founder and CEO, Beacon Consulting Limited, Kabir Adamu, for your time on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Right. And we must also thank you, former consultant, Presidential Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons, and member, West African Action Network for Small Arms, Darlington Umoro, for your time as well.
Thank you. That certificate I was trying to recall that ECOWAS as a body issues to countries before they can import arms for state actors is called the exemption certificate. It's under the Arms Deal Treaty.
All right.